There's 5 reasons you might qualify for a lower car insurance policy. The first one is you may have moved. If you've recently moved, the address or the zip code that you live in may change the rating because insurance companies take into consideration the risk. And if you're in a safer zone, then you're less at risk. If there's more accidents in a specific area, that makes a difference. Here's the thing most people don't realize is when you're looking at these zones, it's per company. It's not just a zone is a risk. Yes, if it's a risky zone, odds are most companies or carriers have a problem in that area, but there's always or usually one good company that has low risk in specific areas to where State Farm and Allstate might be taking on all the risk and they're getting all the accidents, but for some reason Progressive and Geico don't have those claims as much, so the pricing is going to be a lot lower. The other piece that a lot of people don't realize is that risks have changed from zip code to zones. Zip codes used to be every individual zip code. If you look up a map, there's tons of zip codes in a specific area. 49502, 496, whatever, all the 84274, like all of those numbers are different zones that the state has put into place to let them know which is Kentwood, which is Miami, which is in Texas, all of those places. And what a lot of carriers have started to do, and some regulations have forced them to do, is they lump them into one. So that way, one zip code isn't being discriminated against as far as price because it's too high of a risk. Now they're lumping it in with better options so that higher price can come down, the lower price can come up a little bit, and they're essentially sharing the risk of a zone. The second way that your auto policy likely could go down in price is if you're driving less. Because the prices have changed in the last several years, they've skyrocketed 30+%, as you've seen in past videos, to where these carriers are losing their minds. There's too many risks, too many floods, too many hurricanes, too many things happening. And in general, they've tried to find ways to lower the price for the right person. And if somebody's driving less, a lot of companies are starting to take in consideration the cost of the miles that you're driving. Companies like Travelers, companies like Safeco, companies like Liberty Mutual, they are all giving large discounts for lower mileage driving. Now that doesn't mean that you can just say you drive low miles. Yes, you can start the policy off and say, I only drive 3,000 miles a year, but you're going to get a renewal come up. And when that happens, they're going to ask you for the mileage on your car. They're going to ask for the mileage on the car from day one. They're going to check the mileage from oil changes when they get registered as you get oil changes. And if not, they're going to ask you to provide them, maybe even a photo. So there are things that do that. They also may implement a driving system or driving telematics that watches the driving. So companies like Nationwide, they offer Smart Miles, which is a lower cost policy, and they allow you to do a cheaper option, but then you plug in a device or you download an app and it tracks the number of miles you drive. Your policy is more based on the miles than it is on the risk in general. The third way is your family size has changed. A lot of these insurance companies, or states more specifically, have required medical. And because there's medical involved, there's people. And the number of people in your home, the number of people that are likely to ride in your car, could cause the cost of the insurance to go up because they're paying a medical bill. And if you have a lower family size, if cousin moved out or your 25-year-old moved out and they're no longer part of your policy, they're not away at school, but they've actually moved, then they're switching their address, all of those pieces, that can lower the cost of your insurance. Companies like Progressive do rate the number of drivers that are in your household. It's very low because their risk is a lot lower for some reason, but other companies do care on who should or shouldn't be insured. Never be afraid to tell the insurance agent how many drivers you have because you can always exclude them. If you don't want them listed, you can say, yeah, I've got 5 drivers, exclude all 4. We have to list them, so there's some data you got to collect, but then you're not necessarily paying the bill for having the risk of that person versus lying to them and they find out later and then they deny your claim in general anyways. The fourth way that you might qualify for lower car insurance is if you take a defensive driving course. That's a major piece that's become more major because of all of those changes we mentioned in the second one, that now having a proof that you're a good driver matters. Now there's a second piece to that. The defensive driving is more through a program, or I'll just say the government because that's always the way I think about it, is you take a test, it's an online course, it's a couple hours, you watch a guy drive on the computer, and then you choose, should they turn right or who has the right of way. All those pieces that show that you know that you're a better driver and you know the information. That does help prevent accidents, which is going to give you a considerable discount. Before you take that course and look that up, make sure you talk to your agent because not all states even offer this. Half the companies don't offer it in general, and half the states don't offer it as a discount. So don't go take the course, pay the fee, and then realize that you can't even get a discount for that. Before I mention the second piece, if you are shopping for new insurance and you're trying to get a better deal, you might want to consider talking to an independent agent because they work with probably 10 plus companies. You've got Nationwide, Allstate, Geico now is starting to work with independent agents, which is super cool. You got Progressive, you got all these carriers that work with these independent agents, Liberty Mutual starting. There's independent agents that can take your data, your profile, your insurance score, your claims, your history, all those things, and they can help you find the fit of which carrier is going to be the best one. They shop it, they find out which one is the next best fit. Now that usually doesn't cost you anything, at least in 99% of the states, because the companies pay a fee anyways. So instead of them pocketing the fee, they pay it to the agent. So now you don't have to out-pocket that cost. If you are shopping and you're looking to work with an independent agent, I'll put a link in the description below where you can connect with an agent that can shop multiple companies and find out which is a good fit for you. Now back to that second piece that I mentioned, which is something called telematics. So outside of defensive driving, that's showing you're a good driver mentally. The telematics is actually showing an insurance company that you're a good driver. There's an app that you download or a plug-in device that plugs into your car's computer. And what they can do is they can watch your braking, they can watch your acceleration, what time of the day are you driving, how fast are you accelerating, all of those things that they want to know about as far as insurance goes. They usually only rate 4 or 5 different pieces because they're not looking to monitor every little piece, but they do care where you're going. And if you give them 90 days access, they can watch your driving history and say, yes, stamp good driver, excellent driver, decent driver, not good driver. And they can base the rate on that. So you can get hundreds, sometimes 40% off of your policy if you're an excellent driver. Most of them don't have a cutoff. So if you're a really bad driver, they just take the discount away. If you're a bad driver with some companies, just be careful, talk to the agent. You can go backwards. So a couple companies do go backwards and say, okay, well, you're a really bad driver. We're going to charge you 10% more because of that scenario. Now, most of them don't do that. It's one of those things that is very few and far between, but just be careful and talk to the agent when you are doing the quote to find out if it's a fit, that it doesn't go backwards if you don't think that you may mess up. If you get on a boat or get on a plane and you have that device in your pocket, you don't want to necessarily be rated for something like that. And the fifth reason that you might qualify for a lower insurance price is because of your changes that you had in your history. So your risk has changed. You either have lower income, you're not as concerned about the liability risk, maybe your car's gotten older and you don't need certain coverage. It's essentially reviewing the policy on a renewal. When those come up, you might get your renewal and it says this is either the same price or it went up or went down. And now you can take that and talk to your local agent and say, hey, is this still the best option for me? Do I have all the coverages correct? Here's the liability that I have. Is that enough? Here's the property damage. Here's my car. Do you care if it's older? If you want it covered or not? Those are different changes that you can make that will lower the cost pretty significantly because the coverage is what the insurance is paying for if there's a claim. Now that's going to change the risk drastically if there's not as much coverage that's needed. And that's why knowing the coverages that you need to carry is probably the most or one of the most important. I think the most important is talking to an agent that you trust. The second one is knowing the coverages that you need to carry. That's where that agent's going to suggest it, but you have to know that yourself as well. If you're not familiar and you want to get familiar with that, I've got the Car Insurance 101 that's going to go further in depth. If you already understand that part of it and you're just looking for a little bit extra of a deal, there's my discount video here that will give you some additional discounts that you might qualify for. I'm Mark with Think Insurance. I'll see you in the next one.